Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the B Team Analytics Podcast, your home for NBA analytics. And we've had a hell of a week of week one NBA playoffs. Very, very excited to talk about it. But I think to start with, I think we just jump in. Just a couple housekeeping items here to start with. So, you probably noticed, I literally just noticed this last week getting the episode ready, but I did name two things episode 9, so that was cool. The B Team Analytics episode 9, Did You Miss Me? Or What Did I Miss episode. And then I also titled B Team Analytics episode 9, March Madness. So that was fun to look at my edits and see how messed up that was. But I have fixed it. We are now on episode 12 of the B Team Analytics podcast. Hopefully you can see that updated on the onlines now. Second off, we are posting videos now on Spotify, so we'll see if that takes off. I did one, I just kind of exported the video. I was like, let's just see how it goes, and it went decently well, so we'll continue that going forward here probably. And the final piece of housekeeping is everyone's favorite subject. Games I'm watching while I record this podcast, and I'm currently recording this at 6:20. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat game tip off at 6:30. So right now I'm not watching anything, but very excited to see how this game 4 goes. And again, for this episode, we're just going to go down the list. We'll talk about every single series. Some will touch more than others because some are kind of wash of series, really. And honestly, this Miami series probably won't be touched very hard. But this Miami series probably won't be hit on too much just because it hasn't been a fantastic series, to say the least. With all that said, let's jump right into it. And to start with, just kind of an overview. I've kind of counted it back. I started religiously watching the NBA my freshman year of college. Like, I've been an NBA fan my entire life, but when I finally hit college, I got League Pass, so I've watched every single game pretty much from then on. So it's been about 7 years now of religiously watching basketball. And I have to say, this is one of the better round one matchups. And of course, we have a lot of like 3-1 series right now. But a lot of those 3-1s have been very, very, very competitive series. Like, really, 1-2 things go a different way, and this might be a 2-2, even a flip 3-1 series sort of thing. So, definitely very interesting games. Excited to talk about a lot of these. But yeah, no, I've been very much enjoying, and only potentially 2 sweeps: Cleveland, Miami, and then Minnesota Grizzlies. But everything else has been pretty competitive through and through. So, with all that, I think we'll start with one matchup because we do have some very, very big breaking news coming out of Milwaukee, and we will start there. So, obviously, you've probably seen the news, and obviously, I'm not a big Damian Lillard fan. I never really have been, but it really just kind of sucks to, hear the news. But Damian Lillard has been diagnosed with a torn left Achilles tendon, a very, 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 very terrible injury, especially for someone like this. He's 34, 35, maybe 32. Yeah, Damian Lillard is 34 years old. Especially with something this late in the season, it's hard to say that he'll be back next season. So you're basically missing your 35 season. So realistically, he's going to be coming back when he's 36, give or take. So it's just really an unfortunate time for an injury like this to happen. If it happens, a little bit earlier in the season, you can recover this season, potentially come back halfway through next season. But this is, Achilles tendon injuries are year and a half, sort of injuries. So something happening, early playoffs, you assume, early playoffs come next year. And with kind of how this Bucks team is working, I mean, unless Giannis can pull this team to a championship, it's hard for me to kind of look at it and be like, maybe they won't make the playoffs. And we'll dive into it. Once the team gets eliminated, I'll kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into what I think on the team. So the first one we'll do is the Memphis Grizzlies here. But overall, I think just really sucks because he did just come off of the blood clot injury as well. Um, similar thing that what Wimby is going through right now with kind of those blood clot issues. Had the same thing, came back from it really quick. Um, was looking good, and then just a super unfortunate injury for him to sustain towards the end of game 3. And that kind of game 4, sorry. And just kind of, well, now that we got the kind of depressing news out of the way, we can kind of dive into the series a little bit. And it's been very lopsided towards Indiana. Obviously, you had Dame coming back for game 2, and after missing, what was the ending of the season, he had a very, very respectable 14 points. Was that 3 rebounds, 7 assists, and it's one of those things like when you have that much time off, you don't expect a guy to come back and play 100%. And he obviously looked a little shaky, didn't look awful by any stretch, looked way better than Kyle Kuzma, who's been awful this series. But, looked a little shaky. But, all around, not a bad couple games from him. Game 2 and then game 3 as well. Had only 7 points, but, on that game 3 had a lot more makeup by, Gary Trent Jr. and Giannis kind of made up for a lot of the load there. But, only 7 points. But again, I mean, you're coming off of what was about a month, 2 months, 3 months break sort of thing. So it's hard for me to look at that and be like, wow, this guy's awful. You can't really do that because, he was off, can't condition, nothing like that, because you're on these blood thinners, you can't do much physical activity. So for him to even come out here is massive for the team, just to give him a little bit of presence. But I wasn't expecting him to be a major factor in the series. The absolute. Well, let me take a step back here. I should probably mention right now Indiana is up 3 games to 1. Won a very, very good game on the road in Milwaukee. Game 4, the game that Damian Lillard got hurt. He got hurt, mid to late toward the end of the game. I can't exactly remember when, but definitely did get hurt mid to late. But even by that point, Indiana kind of had, I wouldn't say a stranglehold on the game, but you kind of saw, unless a miracle kind of happened, they had that game pretty well down packed. Same thing. It's been, so game 2, we talked about game 1 a little bit in last week's episode. Another sort of, I wouldn't say decisive win, but the Bucks just couldn't get anything going really. Couple key scorers in this game. Giannis been playing fantastically this series with 34. Bobby Portis again with 28 points, so getting a little bit of production. But, guys like Kyle Kuzma, who we'll touch on here in a second, a couple other guys, Lopez not doing as much, 8 points, 1 rebound. So, not great sort of production out of a lot of these guys. So, overall, Milwaukee just doesn't look like the Minnesota of the past sort of thing. And on the flip side, I think Indiana is just playing, lights out right now. They're having fantastic throughput, basically 1 through 6 are scoring double digits per game. So they're having great production through and through. Pascal Siakam is first place with 22.3. Miles Turner, 20 or 15 points. Tyrese Halliburton as well, 15 points. And then Andrew Nembhard with 15 as well. So really, really good scoring. On top of that, they're grabbing boards. Tyrese Halliburton's putting up about 12.3 assists a game. So they're really moving the ball. What I really enjoy watching about this Indiana team are the amount of passes they're getting off. Tyrese Halliburton's probably arguably their best player out there. You can have, Pascal Siakam as another one up there that's, probably one of their better players, but they don't have a guy. They don't have a guy who you can just pass the ball to and be like, hey, go make something happen. So their philosophy and what really was kind of hurting the Bucks a lot of the time is they're really passing the ball around. They're getting good motion, getting good actions throughout the play that no Milwaukee defense just couldn't hold up to. So I just love kind of watching some of this basketball. Just, the basketball is getting thrown around all the plays, great rotations, multiple passes throughout the entire possession. There's the word I was looking for. Throughout the possession, fluid basketball, and it's just hurting the Bucks on defense. And then offensively, I think their defense has been pretty good. Obviously, stopping guys like Kyle Kuzma, who, should realistically be more or less a third option for your team. But, is coming out here has an offensive rating of 80, which is awful when you look at it. Your team offensive rating is 112, so you're almost 30 points behind the team average. And then defensive rating, team average at 21.1, you're at 26. So, he's just a liability out there for this team right now. And he's supposed to come in and replace a guy like Chris Middleton, who, with his injuries throughout, might have not been super productive, but still is a great player and would have produced in a situation like this. Do I think that would have made the difference in this series? No, not at all. I think Indiana just has it right now. But it does kind of bode to a, overarching problem for this Milwaukee team, which we'll dive into most likely next week when they do get eliminated. And I kind of do more or less their season recap, kind of future outlook, but it doesn't bode well future-wise for this team. But that is a little bit about this series. I think next game is Tuesday for these guys. Game 5 in Indiana, with Indiana having a 3-1 series lead. They did what they needed to do. They got 1 of 2 on the road, take it to game 5, finish the series in 5. So, definitely not the top favorite series so far, but definitely one of my more favorite ones to watch because they've been, I wouldn't say the closest games, but there's been a lot of competitive juices, a few scrums in there also, a couple fights. There's been a lot of fights this playoffs. I say quotes and fights, but there's been a lot of scrums so far this playoffs. So you can really tell there's been a lot of heart put into these games, and people care what happens. So it's been fun to watch. But overall, not my favorite, but definitely a fun one I've been watching. Moving on, the next series I want to touch is the number 1 seed Thunder versus the Grizzlies. And obviously, this was a 4-0 series sweep. Ja Morant did get hurt about halfway through game 2 for them. Hold on, I want to check that. Halfway through game 3, apologies. But even by that point, I don't think it mattered. This team was gonna lose, and honestly, I didn't watch many of these games because truly, even when Ja Morant played, the 2 games he played the entire time. Obviously, we talked about game 1, the 131-80 loss, the 50 piece in the playoffs, which is crazy. And then game 2, 118-199. That game wasn't close through and through. Got hurt, 114-108, and then a slightly closer game 4, which I'll be honest, I didn't watch because it didn't matter by that point. Oklahoma City was going to win. I wasn't too worried about it. But 117-115 loss, and Ja Morant had some fun comments to say after game 2. or after game 4 when they got eliminated. Um, and he basically said he had the Oklahoma City Thunder figured out, and it should be going back to should be going back to Oklahoma City 2-2. And I just, when you get eliminated in a sweep fashion like this, just be quiet. There's, it's just take the L, move on, move on to the next series, move on to the next year. John Morant definitely looked really good this series. Do I think him figuring out the Oklahoma City Thunder would have made the difference? No. I think even from the start, I think everyone knew Oklahoma City was going to win, and it just happened. There's just not a lot for me to talk about the series because it just was one of those series. It just was over in a flash, sort of thing. And um, in this case, the Grizzlies got eliminated. It's time. I'll dive into what I think future-wise this team has because I think this Memphis team can be really good. They have everything they need to be a good team going forward. I do like their coaching hire. Right now, he's the interim coach. I foresee them making him permanent. And obviously, I mentioned it a couple episodes ago, but that is the Thomas Ilios. Ilios, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm pretty sure that's what they were saying on the broadcast. But, um, you know, he's a European guy, had really great pedigree over there. I think he can bring a lot to this team. Especially, he could bring kind of what the Pacers do. John Morant has that guy in him where if you need to, he can go out and get a bucket for you. But I really think this Grizzlies team could really capitalize on a little bit more of a team mentality sort of game because they do. They got a lot of good players. I think you have guys like Aaron Baines. Jaren Jackson Jr. is really good. Santa Aldama, who I really enjoy watching. And then, a really promising Zach Edey in there as well. So I think coming into the off season, you're retaining most of your guys. Marvin Bagley the third, you potentially need to re-sign. Luke Kennard, you possibly need to sign. Obviously, Santa Aldama, you have to resign. I think that's one of their big moves in free agency is to resign him. You got a little bit of cap space in there as well to kind of mess around with. Maybe pick up, I would say maybe a second option. I know Desmond Bane is pretty good in that second option role. I think if you can upgrade that second option, that would be fantastic. I would potentially maybe target a 3, probably more of a 3 option in there. Or sorry, the small forward. Target more of a small forward to kind of round out that starting lineup because you can play Santa Aldama at the 4. He's been coming off the bench primarily. You can play Zach Edey at a 5. Obviously, John Morant at your 1, and then Desmond Baines at your 2. Maybe push Jaren Jackson Jr. maybe to the bench. Maybe play that 5 option as well. Actually, what am I talking about? You start him over Edey all day long. I don't know why I said you should start him, but you can start Jaren Jackson Jr. So it would be John Morant, Desmond Bane, upgraded 3, potentially Aldama at 4, Jaren Jackson Jr. at 5, Edey coming off the bench. That's a really good, rotation right there. You guys like Scottie Pippen Jr. is pretty solid for them. You also have, Jalen Wells, who's played a lot for them this year. Very effective in his rookie season. So, you have a lot of pieces on this team who are really good. On top of that, you don't have any first round picks this year. You have 2 second round picks. You do have 26 first round pick. That's swapped out of its mind, it looks like. 27, you have your own in 28. So you got you got some good picks in there at least. Not the greatest draft capital possible, but definitely some in there if you need to dig in, maybe trade for someone like that. I don't think this team, um, I don't think it would be good to kind of dive into the trade market. At least you got a couple guys you could potentially trade. You could do a Zach Edey trade to maybe upgrade somewhere in there, but overall, I think you hit the free agency market a little bit harder. If I understand the cap correctly, they are currently in the luxury tax, but if you wanted to, you can stay just below the first apron if you kind of go get a decently high salary guy. I think first apron next year is 175 million, and they're at 130. So you got a little bit of wiggle room in there if you want to go spend a little bit of money, but definitely something in there. So I think if you're smart, you hire Ilios now and basically be like, hey, you have a full off season, get your offense set, get your defense set, tell me a guy to go get. And I think this team could be top half of the league. They were top half for a while there. They were rolling, second or third, just kind of fell off towards the end of the year. But you have a chance to, stay at that second spot if you just, play, I wouldn't say play a little bit harder, but, have a little bit of a better ending stretch. So there are my slight thoughts on the Grizzlies. Just, not a great playoff performance for them. But overall, very, very good. The next series, let's touch on because it is the game I'm watching as I record this podcast, and I'm also going to do the season end review on the Miami Heat for a good reason here. Obviously, Cleveland Cavaliers are taking care of business. They are up 3-0, and they're currently up 20-8 in game 4. So I'm just going to take the wild guess and assume this Heat team is probably done for the year. Overall, decent series. Cleveland's just taking care of business. This is another series that I definitely wasn't watching. Most of the games, 121, 100, 121, 112, and then 124, 87 in game 3. So it's just not an interesting series. I think I watched game 1, and then game 2 and game 3 were during different games. I think one of them was during the Celtics game, and no other games gets watched during that. But, overall, this Heat team, I didn't expect much from them. I don't think anyone really expected much from them. But this is another team, I think, in my, season end review for them, I think you broke up with your toxic ex here is kind of what happened, and you're just kind of trying to get through the year is basically what this Heat team is doing right now. Get through the year, and let's come back stronger next year, sort of the thing. They got rid of Jimmy Butler. You have, a lot of draft picks. Obviously, you have Golden States this year, which probably won't be amazing, but, still a first round pick. You got yours next year. You got a couple second rounders, and then you got your own throughout 2031, basically. So, a little bit of draft capital. You got a lot of young guys on this team signed out for, at least one more year. So, your core guys, you got Bam signed out to 29. You have Tyler Hero signed out to 26. Andrew Wiggins signed out to 26. Tony Rozier has one more year. Duncan Robinson has one more year. And Kyle Anderson has one more year. All these guys are right around the 30. So highest would be Bam with 37 million. Andrew Wiggins with 28. Tony Rozier with 26. So you got a lot of high pay guys. I think it's time for this team to just rebuild. I think that they know it. They need to. I think a lot of this has to I think Pat Riley just has to sit down this offseason and really look at, hey, first off, how can we get under the apron? I think the first apron was 165 million. I say that very, very tentatively. I try to learn how the CBA worked, but it's the most complicated thing in the entire world. So I'm just gonna be spewing misinformation as long as possible, sort of thing. But yeah, so definitely high salary. I think you gotta unload a little bit of that coming into the off season, get under that apron, and then potentially kind of rework this offense, rework the lineup to, maybe get one, two, maybe one superstar to kind of pair with Um, Tyler Hero and Bam. I think you kind of build around because I think those are your two best guys. I think you can maybe move on from Terry Rozier, maybe upgrade the point guard spot. Um, you have Jaime Jaquez out there as well. You can lean on um, some guys like that on the bench that you can kind of, work around and maybe build up a good lineup there. But I think the future isn't bright for this team. I wouldn't say, dismal. I wouldn't say it's, in the toilet, but I think you have to make some pretty tough decisions this offseason and say, hey, we can't compete anymore. Not a bad history for this Heat team. Not a bad place this Heat team's in. I just they're on the wrong side of optimal. Is kind of where I put them. I think you gotta get on the right side of optimal and then start a 1 or 2 year rebuild sort of thing. So that is my season review on the Heat. Moving on, I deserve to talk about this series, the Celtics and Magic series. This has been a very, very, very fun series. It's taken years off of my life. This is going to be a very stressful playoff run for me. But I think this Magic team, I should have seen it coming. I knew it was coming. Magic ended the season with one of the best defensive ratings in the league, and they're showing it. This is a fantastic team. What they're really doing is they're denying the Celtics from shooting threes. They're basically like, hey, beat us any other possible way you want to, just you're not going to shoot threes on us. And that's really what they're doing. And it's working. I mean, the first 2 games we kind of eked out, not shooting very many threes. Obviously, you can say they're playing dirty. We've had a lot of injuries this first game. You had, Tatum hurting his wrist. You had Brown. He's been, injured throughout the last couple weeks of the season. You can still see he's not 100%. You have Drew Holiday, who's still hurt. He had a hamstring injury after game 1. I think that was just a playing injury. I don't think that's a dirty injury. So, overall, a couple injuries throughout this series, so we haven't been 100%. But, overall, we're still balling out. Celtics, we're getting the job done. We're showing, like, hey, we're still contenders. I think next series is going to be a lot easier than what this series is because we're playing the Knicks, potentially the Knicks. And I think, next series is going to be easier on the body. I think while the Knicks are going to put up a fight, I think, we've had their number all year. So if we can get through this, I think we get to Cleveland. I'm not jinxing anything. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm just saying the path is there for us to play Cleveland. So make sure we're rested for that at least. But, this Orlando team's, defined by defense. For teams like this, they don't have, a go-to guy. Pablo's kind of been that guy for them. Franz Wagner is also fantastic. I slept on him as well throughout the season, but he's been playing fantastic this series. But the problem with kind of a team like this or Orlando, how they're structured, they're really good at defense, but they're not super efficient on offense. So you can, stop the Celtics all you want, but if you can't score at the other end, I think it's hard for you to win a game. So, and that's kind of what I liked about Cleveland is, they have this really good defense, but they're also very efficient on the offensive side as well. So you can have your main philosophy on defense, but you also have to have, an above par offense to make sure you're still outscoring the other team sort of thing. And I think that's what this Orlando team lacks is a little bit of more scoring. But we'll dive into that most likely next week when they get eliminated on Tuesday. Cross their fingers and hope sort of thing. So, but yeah, this has been a very entertaining series, very, very scrappy. Um, the Celtics players aren't taken too well to the fouls or the hard fouls that Orlando has been fouling or committing this series. And I mean, I'm a little 50-50 on it. There's been some reckless calls. Caldwell Pope has really been at the center of the kind of those fouls, but overall, I don't think it's been immensely dirty. There's definitely been a couple calls. I'm like, okay, that's not good. It's like that's not great. I think the stat came out across the entire NBA. There's been 4 flagrant fouls. I think this is after game threes. There's been 4 flagrant fouls. 3 of them have been on Orlando. So it definitely points that direction. But overall, it's the playoffs. You're going to be more physical. Sometimes some of this is going to happen. You just have to play through it as well. So overall, been a very fun series for me. Obviously, the best because Celtics, but definitely a fun one to watch. Next up, let's move to a game. They're only on game 3 right now, but the Golden State Warriors versus Houston Rockets series. Golden State right now has a very, very commanding 2-1 lead. They have a very pivotal game 4 here. I think if they can win this, obviously you go up 3-1. You have to go back to Houston for game 5, so it'd be hard to win there. But I mean, you have game 6 where you can lock up that in six games. But Houston kind of at the back. This is, a must win game for them. They're currently on the road in Golden State, and Curry's kind of been the guy here. Curry, it's Curry. It's been Curry. Curry is Curry. Curry is currying, and that's really all you can point to because other than that, obviously, Jimmy Butler got hurt during this series. I believe he is out for game 4 as well. So you don't have, really your number 2 option to turn to. But apart from that, Curry's had 20, what is that, almost 30 points a game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. So he's really been carrying the load for this Golden State team. And in the big game 3 that they won here, let's just pull up those stats because if I'm unmistaken, he went crazy. Yeah, 36 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists. And, not much production from anyone else. You had the starting lineup. Draymond Green's more out there for defense, obviously, but 7 points. Jonathan Kuminga was 7. Ski only had 2 points. You got a lot more production from the bench. Gary Payton was 6. Gary Payton the second. And then Buddy Hield as well was 17. So getting a lot more scoring from the bench, but Curry's really kind of, dragging this team to the win, which I thought they would. What I didn't think would happen is this, Houston team just kind of fall apart. I thought they had enough to kind of go get some of these games, but, they're playing a very strict 8-guy rotation. So you get a lot more scoring. Fred VanVleet was 17, Alfred Sengun with 15, and Thompson, who's looked pretty decent. You're kind of throwing him into a big situation in a rookie year sort of thing, so I didn't expect too much from him, but, in this pivotal game 3 that Houston lost, you had 15 and 11. You had 11 and 7 rebounds with 4 assists, so had a very good showing for a rookie. I don't expect him to put up 35 and 5 sort of nights, but, really good for rookie in the first playoff series he's ever in. He's also starting these games, so really, leading the way for this team. Not too much bench scoring. You're getting about 30-ish points compared to, well, the bench for Golden State's doing a little bit more, but they had about 40, 45 points off the bench in this game three. 104-93 win. So, overall, it's been pretty good. Been pretty lopsided. They had a really, really good game three for Houston where they did win 109-94, but Golden State did what they had to do. They won one on the road. They went, 1-for-1 on the road and, came back to Golden State with a chance to really put a nail biter, put a finisher on this series with this big game four. So, very interested to see how this game goes and potentially, see, a number two team go in the first round. So I think this series we'll talk a lot more next week, especially it's supposed to wrap up, I believe. This is Monday, so it'll be Wednesday, Friday. Wrap up on Friday, so we'll see how that kind of plays out. Next up, let's talk about a really fun. This has been my favorite series to watch so far. Is the Lakers Minnesota game or Minnesota series, and I gave my apology last week to Minnesota fans that listened to my podcast, and I think I have to do it again because Minnesota got the job done at home. This is another one, the 6th seed, so they're gonna have to either go to LA and win Game 5, or you got Game 6 at home. So, obviously throughout the series, Game 3, Luka did have a pretty serious illness out there. So he was less than effective in that game for them, where Minnesota did win 116-104. LeBron did carry the team with 38-10. And I think what I really want to dive into the series is this Game 4, which I think was probably one of the better games of the series. So just kind of set the scene. LeBron just came off of playing 41 minutes. He played 41 minutes last night. Luka had 39 minutes. Sick. He played sick, by the way. So, just not feeling himself. Still played, most of the game. So you had all that kind of compounded in there. Obviously, they did lose 116-104. Coming in the Game 4, must win, can't go down 3-1. What you do is come out here and play LeBron James for 46 minutes. You play Luka for 45, which is insane because in the second half, JJ Redick didn't sit LeBron or Luka once. They didn't sit him once. You have basically your entire starting lineup played 35 to 40 minutes. Rui played 41. Austin Reeves played 35. Dorian Finney-Smith also played 40 minutes. So towards the end of the game, you could really see, but these guys were gassed. Absolutely, absolutely gassed towards the end of the game. And Minnesota just kind of ran away with it at the end. The GOAT of the series, I mean, sure, you have LeBron James, but, Minnesota has Jaden McDaniels, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards said it, that dude never looks like he gets tired. He looked like, especially towards the end of the game, the last 2 minutes, he was running all over LeBron. He shut down LeBron twice. LeBron turned the ball over on an inbound, and then towards the end of the game, he also shut down Luka on the final shot of the game as well. And overall, I mean, this team just looked a little bit more fresh down the stretch just because, you played LeBron and Luka the entire second half. And I think for JJ Redick, I think this is definitely a learning opportunity for him as well. I think you have a lot to look at this game and be like, maybe I should have done that differently. I think no matter what, scape or area the team in is, you have to get LeBron at least 2 minutes of rest in the fourth quarter, maybe a couple minutes rest in the third quarter as well. So definitely something to look at for him. Overall, I think unless a miracle happens, which if anyone could do it, LeBron is going to do it. But Minnesota goes back to LA for game 5, which I would expect a potential loss for them. But then you go game 6, you have in Minnesota. I think that's a win for them. So I think this is a very easy Minnesota in 6 sort of series because they got the job done in LA, sort of thing. They won the one game. They won game 1 in LA. You won the 2 on the road here. So now you can just do your thing, win it in 6 at home. And that's a great series for you. Move on. You play most likely Golden State. And even then, I think that's a winnable series for them, especially if you have Jimmy Butler still hurt. I think, you have, answers for Draymond Green, and whether that's Nas Reed or Jade McDaniels could potentially play that, or I don't think Jade McDaniels will play that, but you have potential stops for that. You have Jade McDaniels, you could play Steph Curry. You have Anthony Edwards, who's fantastic. You have Gobert, who I literally was a liability out there. They in the last 4 minutes, they literally had to call timeout to get him off the court and play Nas Reed because Rudy couldn't go again. Rudy could not go against the smaller lineup they were playing. It just wasn't the matchup for them this series, at least. Maybe he can do a little bit more next series, but even then, if Golden State plays a smaller lineup, I don't think Rudy can play in that series again. So definitely interesting to see how this team plays. But you got to first get the job done here, win in LA, make it a 5-game series, and move on to the second round. So that's what I have to say about this Minnesota series. Definitely interesting to look at, but what I've been saying all along, the Lakers team, their roster construction is not very good, and it's finally showing, and Minnesota's kind of bringing that out of it. So definitely interesting to see how this next couple games play out. Those games do get played tomorrow, so fun to see how that does play out. If I'm unmistaken, 2 series left to talk about. Both series we can talk about reffing in, but we will start with the Knicks Pistons series. Now, the Pistons are making this very, very interesting. While it doesn't show in the record, you could say it should be 2-2, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But, overall, I do think the Pistons has a lot going for them. Definitely a younger team in their first kind of playoff situation in forever. They did have, the big game 2 where they did win in New York, but did drop 2 games on the road in Detroit. So they dropped 2 games at home, which is not great, especially when you just got home court advantage back. All you had to do was win at home and you would be fine. But, dropping 2 very close games, 118-116 game 3, and then a 94-93 loss in game 4. So couple shots go differently, could be 3-1 going Detroit's way. But at the end of the day, game 2, the Knicks just kind of ended it. Cat had 2 great game-leading shots in both games to really shut it down. But, overall, this has been a very, very even series through and through. There's not really one guy either way who you can say has been taking over the series. Jalen Brunson's obviously carrying, New York with 33 points. Cat's also doing his thing with 22 on their end. If you look at Detroit, it's a little bit more even scoring across the board. Wade with 25, Tobias Harris with 15. So, doing this kind of by committee for both teams. And all this really kind of came to a head in game 4. Very close matchup throughout the entire game. Battling the entire time. Last 2 possessions, Cat came down, hit a fantastic little short corner fadeaway shot. Looked beautiful, went in, swoosh sort of thing. Put him up, 94-93. And then coming down the court, and this is where it gets very controversial. Detroit had one more chance to win this game. So in Detroit's final play, I'll kind of walk through why everyone's up in arms about this, and it's kind of a broader conversation on reffing at the end of the game. But Detroit came down, had the chance to win after Cat's shot. Had the play draw up for Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham kind of danced, had a step back corner free throw shot, missed it. Note there, great wide open shot, missed the first shot. It then kind of went into a scrum. A couple guys kind of were fighting for it. The ball ended up in Tim Hardaway Jr.'s hands in the corner for a three-pointer. He kind of did a little Dwayne Wade kind of pump fake sort of shot, kind of leaned into the jumping defender next to him on his shoulder, and then kind of shot it like that. Typically, you're going to get a foul call on that. But what I'm saying, at the end of the game, and at the end of a playoff game, you're never going to get that call. And even in a lot of situations, a lot of last minute shots, you're not going to get a foul call. And you have to recognize that. You have to minimum just shoot the ball, and if the guy makes reasonable contact where the ref have to be like, yes, I have to call that foul, then you will. But if you're going to bait a foul like that, it's not the time and place to do that. And if you want to complain like, oh my God, the refs missed this potential game-winning foul, tell Cade Cunningham to make his first shot. None of this would have happened if Cade would have made the shot on the first time. And that's what I keep saying. Like, if you're going to complain about the refs, play better for, the other 47 in 36 seconds, So you're not putting yourself in that situation where the refs have to determine the outcome. Put it in your own hands, which you could have done. Cade Cunningham could have won that game with that little step back corner shot, but he missed it, and you just have to rely on the refs by that point because you don't get the clean rebound. You then kind of dribbles off to the corner, and you have, 1.2 seconds left once that ball gets to the corner to shoot the ball and, draw the foul. And I don't think you can blame the refs for losing that game when you had every opportunity to win that game. Even then, Cade Cunningham turned the ball over the possession before the Knicks made their game going ahead shot. So there's so much more in this game you can point to and blame, like, hey, this is the reason we lost this game, opposed to that last second shot. And I'll never say the refs, I'll never say, hey, the refs blew the game, because there's always 6 or 7 things you can point to and say, hey, that was the reason you lost the game. You turned the ball over the possession before, you missed the game-tying shot originally, sort of thing. So that's kind of my rant on the refs. A lot of people have been complaining about the refs this series or this playoffs. I don't think it's been awful. I do think they've been swallowing the whistle a little bit. So a lot fewer calls, or a lot fewer fouls have been called this series, which I personally like. And that's across the board. I think there's been a lot less fouls called across the entire thing. And that's good. I really, really enjoy just seeing basketball being played. And that's kind of an example. Most of the time, you're not going to get that call because it's kind of a ticky-tacky sort of call. Or that final shot where you kind of lean into the guy and try to draw the foul. That's kind of a ticky-tacky call that most of the time you're not going to get called in more physical games like this. So definitely fun to see how if you lose, it's always the refs' fault, sort of thing. And I blame the refs after the Celtics lost in Game 3, but at the end of the day, it's hard to blame the refs when you were just playing awfully, sort of thing. So there's my continuing rant on the refs. I'll continue the rant about the refs. The refs, I try to take the ref side as much as possible. Because I do. It's a thankless job. When you do it well, no one cares. If, you miss a call at the end of the game, you're plastered across the um, Twitter saying these refs are terrible and we have to fix the system, sort of things. Definitely a fun place to be, so I try to take their side as much as possible, but it did affect the Detroit Pistons because at the end of the day, they're now down 3-1 instead of tied 2-2. So fun to see. Do I think Detroit could pull out the win? No, because the last two games they've had a chance to win it, and both times they've kind of choked it away. So I think Detroit has a lot more to do before they can start complaining directly about the refs. Clean up some of these final possessions, and I think they do pretty well. So, with that being said, I think that's where I'll leave this New York series. They do have, game 5 in New York on Tuesday, so I'm very interested how that plays out. But overall, I think you can probably put a nail in Detroit's season here. So, and last but not least, the series I want to talk about is the Denver Nuggets and Los Angeles Clippers, currently tied 2-2. This has been my favorite series to watch so far. Most games have been really close. Clip game 2 came down to a last second shot missed by Jokic, a little 25-foot, kind of step back three. But that was a close game. Game 3 was, a kind of a Clippers blowout, 17-83. But then, Denver took a really, really fun game 4 by, no one's going to talk about it, but Jokic airballed the game-winning shot. But luckily, Aaron Gordon was directly under the basket, put the ball back in with it was like the shot happened, it hit the rim at like 0.4, and Aaron Gordon put it in the basket and released the ball at 0.1 basically. And it's funny, that's another one everyone's on Twitter fighting whether it's good or not. And they're pulling, a lot of people are just clipping the TV view, which kind of shows Aaron Gordon didn't have it. But if you look at another view from the side, it's pretty clear that his fingers were just off of it. I think what really helped Denver in that case is the fact that the call on the floor was a made basket. Because I think if it was called a missed basket, I think it would be hard to overturn it. In that case, I think this was one where it was just either way you called it, there wasn't enough either direction to say, hey, this was an obvious miss or a make. So I think it really helped Denver's case that it was called a made basket on the floor. So overall, this, another really, really fun series, pretty even. Jokic is basically playing coach and star player out there. He's literally playing 1 through 5, and then is also coaching it well. There's points in the game where he'll be pointing the guys on the bench, and they'll bring them in, basically. So he's running the substitutions. He's running the game on the court as well. It's shocking, but he's looking like he cares to play basketball, which is really shocking because, he's had kind of this calm-mannered kind of demeanor most of the time where it just kind of looks like he's just out there vibing sort of thing. But he's putting MVP numbers up, 28, 13, 10, which is fantastic. You're also getting really good production from Jamal Murray. He's kind of been a little wishy-washy in a couple games, but he's 28, 4, and 6. Aaron Gordon is playing really fantastic for this team, having 17-6 with 1.8 assists. So, you're getting really good scoring there. Russell Westbrook's also been kind of, I wouldn't say wishy-washy, but he's having a Russell Westbrook kind of, series where, at one point he'll look like MVP prime um, Russell Westbrook, and then at points he'll look like, you know, your local YMCA sort of players. Definitely fun to see that. Turning to the Clippers side, obviously you're getting great production from Kawhi, really the head of that defense, but also, leading scoring with 26, 7, and 3. And then James Harden still having kind of a James Harden kind of series, 21, 4, and it's about 10 assists as well. Overall, I mean, this has definitely been a very top heavy. When I say top heavy, I'm talking starters really kind of leading the way for both these teams. Um, and I truly think this may go 7 games unless one of these teams I think can pull out a win on the road. All right, let's start. If the Clippers can pull out a win on the road here going to Denver, I think Clippers win this in 6. If not, I think this goes 7 games. I think Denver wins it at home in 7, sort of thing. So definitely, definitely been a very, very competitive series, back and forth. You've had your blowouts here and there, but overall, when it comes down to it, if it's a close game, you have Jokic out there who's gonna stay the ship for this Denver team and really kind of lead the charge and ultimately win the game for some of these guys most of the time. So definitely a series to watch out for. Another fun thing, Ben Simmons is playing a couple times in this game or this series, so fun to see him playing basketball again. Not super competitive basketball. He's played, let's see here, about 9 minutes a game, but he's still playing. Definitely it's fun to see him on the court every once in a while because it's like, oh, Ben Simmons, dunks the ball. I'm like, that dude still plays? That's shocking. Fun to see, but this is definitely going to be a 7 game series. We may even have to talk about this on Sunday because I think Sunday would be game 7. Sunday or Monday would be game 7 for this. So definitely a fun series to look out for. So with all that said, I think that's every single series so far. Obviously, 2 of them have wrapped. Okay, 1.5 of them have wrapped up so far. I think the remainder here, I think, other than this Clippers Denver, I think is pretty well wrapped up. I wouldn't say pretty well wrapped up, but the momentum is shifting towards a lot of these teams' ways, and I think a lot of them just have to take care of business moving forward here. So, with all that being said, I think a lot of my predictions, I kind of looked back and looked at my predictions in that playoff predictions episode, have gone up in flames. I think I'll be 50% entering round 2, which is kind of sad, but it's predictions. That's why you don't listen to them. I think when some of these series wrap up, I think I'll probably try to make a round 2 kind of predictions, or because a lot of these would wrap up Tuesday or Thursday, and they would probably start Saturday, Sunday. So I might be able to make a predictions on Sunday. And then you'll get that on Monday, hopefully. So, with all that being said, I want to thank you for continuing to listen to this podcast. And with all that said, I hope you watch a basketball game this week.